Hi, my name is Crystal Favorito. I'm Miss Teen India Georgia 2016 and 2017 and Miss Teen India USA first runner-up. I'm here today with Senator Josh McKoon, and he's running for Georgia's Secretary of State. He's agreed to spend a few minutes to talk to us about what it is the Secretary of State actually does. So thank you, Josh, for your time today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. So before we talk about the office, do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, sure. As you said, my name is Josh McKoon. I've been serving in the Georgia State Senate for the last 7 years. I was elected for the first time in 2010. I've been reelected 3 times since then.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Prior to that, I was chairman of my local Republican Party, very active in the Young Republicans and in my community. I've served on the board of the United Way, the Urban League, and the Muskogee County Juvenile Drug Court. Probably the biggest change in my life over the last year, last August 2016, I got married to the former Jacqueline Byrd, and so we celebrated our first anniversary just a month ago. And in my day job, because obviously the legislature is part-time, I'm a lawyer in private practice, and I've been doing that for the last 13 years. So that's a little bit about me.
All right. So you appeared at the Festival of India and you told a really touching story about your mother. Do you want to go ahead and repeat it, for those who didn't see you that day?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So it was a real pleasure to be able to be at the Festival of India this year. And of course, a lot of the speakers were talking about the historic friendship and relationship between India and the United States. And so when it came to be my turn to speak, one of the things I was thinking about that day was the friendship I've enjoyed with Hiren Patel, who was a peer of mine growing up. Hiren moved to Columbus when he was in the 3rd grade. We met at Brookstone School in the 4th grade, and we've been friends ever since. And I spent almost as much time growing up in Hiren's house as I did in my home with my parents. And Hiren's dad, P.H. Patel, is a gastroenterologist in private practice in Columbus. About 2 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And as you can imagine, that was a very troubling time for me and my family. My mother went through just a terrible time with the chemotherapy, with everything she was going through to try to treat that cancer. And I specifically leaned on Dr. PH a lot during that 11 weeks that she was going through that disease to ask questions, to seek his counsel. The one time I can remember Mom really visibly improving was after a procedure he did that gave her a little bit of relief. And so I just was reflecting on how all of that would not have been possible without the historic relationship between India and the United States, and Dr. PH making the decision to come to Columbus, Georgia and practice medicine. So he's had a tremendous impact. He and Hiren both have had a tremendous impact on my life and my family's life. And so that was the story I shared with the crowd that day.
It's so nice to hear. So let's continue on to what it is that the Secretary of State actually does.
So the Secretary of State is charged with a few different responsibilities. The 4 sort of big functions of the office are handling corporate filings, regulating securities, both those that sell securities and the actual listing of securities, the elections, administration of elections, and then professional licensing. There are 41 licensing boards that oversee the professional licensure in Georgia. So those are the 4 big ticket responsibilities of the Secretary of State.
So what types of professionals are required to be licensed or have licensing?
So it's a wide array. Everything from funeral homes, embalmers, to interior designers, music therapists, lactation consultants, just a wide array of folks, cosmetologists, that wind up going through a testing process to receive a state license to then be able to go to work. So it's a wide array of different professions that come under the auspices of the Secretary of State's office.
That's interesting. Now I know my cosmetologist, where she got her license. So what is regulating securities? I think you mentioned that as one of the responsibilities.
So when we think about on the news, we see the stories about the stock market and stocks being traded. The legal term for that are securities. And so there's federal regulation of that, but there's also state regulation. So Georgia has a registration process for people that sell and market securities, and Georgia also has a process to regulate the sale and marketing of securities. And so all of the responsibility for that falls to the Secretary of State.
Okay. That's, a lot of pressure, right? I bet nobody really knew that, So what do your responsibilities or the responsibilities of the Secretary of State include for elections?
So when it comes to elections, the Secretary of State is essentially the primary guardian of the integrity of our electoral process. So making sure that our elections are conducted fairly, making sure that our elections are conducted in a manner where the public is confident in the result, making sure that people have access to the ballot, making sure we have simple methods of registering to get on the voter rolls, making sure that there's education well in advance of when you need to register, what elections are coming up. All of those things fall under the Office of the Secretary of State. And the Secretary of State works with the 159 counties, which either have a board of elections or a probate judge that oversees their local elections process. The Secretary of State, in partnership with those folks, manage the statewide elections process. So it is a big part of the responsibility of the office. It's one of the reasons I'm excited to be in the race and am seeking the office. Is I'm very passionate about the administration of our elections.
So what do you think that the office can improve?
Well, there are clearly some areas that need to be improved. I think that everyone has a sincere concern about the electronic voting machines that we've been using for the last decade or so to conduct Georgia's elections. A lot of people want to see a paper trail of some kind, and the next Secretary of State is going to have a say in what machines replace the ones we're using now. And so I think it's critically important that the next Secretary of State make sure that we have that additional level of confidence by having a paper trail when it comes to elections. I think when you look at Maryland, Maryland had the same electronic voting machines we have today, and they made a decision to go back to optical scan ballots, which are kind of like the old standardized test type forms that you just bubble in and run through a machine. In that case, there's a built-in paper record, which is the ballot you filled out. So I think that as Georgia's next Secretary of State, it's going to be very important to me, as we make that transition, to get to a paper backup or paper trail that will increase voters' confidence in our electoral process.
Do you think that we missed anything, or there's anything else that the people should know about what it is the Secretary of State does?
Well, all I would say is that when it comes to the licensing area and the professional licensing, we do need to look at each and every license and see if it is necessary to have those licenses, because we have to remember when the legislature makes something a licensed profession, what we're saying is you need to get government permission to do that job. And so while some of these positions clearly have public safety and public health concerns that need to be addressed and probably require a degree of regulation, there are others that probably don't. So being able to streamline that process, make it easier for people to get those licenses, to connect people to the dignity of honest, hard work, is something that's going to be very important for Georgia's next Secretary of State to do.
All right. Well, I wish you the best of luck. And
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
It was my pleasure.